You are listening to the Techie Leadership Show with Bogdan and Andrei. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Techie Leadership Show. Today with me we have Vadym Kazulkin. He is a father of three, husband, developer, author, and speaker with over 20 years of professional experience. Vadym likes to continuously extend his soft skills in the trenches by working with people on a daily basis. He is also the co-organizer of the Java user group Bone and serverless Bone meetups. Besides work and family, he has a passion for soccer, biathlon, and darts. Hello, Vadym, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, hello, Andrei. Hello, Bogdan. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
You have told me everything. Yeah, thank you very much once again. Yeah, probably you have told everything about me. I can only add little things. I'm Ukrainian native, but I have been living since 20 years in Germany and working in Bonn, mainly in Bonn. As you told, I'm the co-organizer of Java user group Bonn and serverless meetup Bonn, but we currently paused due to Corona. Yes, and yeah, I'm heavily involved in Java community in the last three years in serverless AWS community. So mainly I'm speaking about both these topics. And yes, I'm working for the company IP Labs in Bonn, which we write software for designing and purchasing of photo products like photo books, calendars, prints, posters, gifts. And we are 100% subsidiary of the Fujifilm.
Nice.
Oh, big company.
You get to work on interesting projects, I guess.
Yeah, we have to deal a lot with the scaling, with peaks, because people buy these gifts near Christmas time. So a lot of challenges to solve in the last years. I also heavily involved in the cloud transformation in my company, but I probably will be talking about this also later.
So probably have amazing stories about tech leadership and how it works. Successful leadership and also some failures.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, let's get right into it then. So can you please share with us what is the biggest leadership success story that you have witnessed?
Probably all the stories I have witnessed have to do something with my company because I have been working there for 14 years. So it's a huge part of my experience. Yeah, so in different roles, but probably the main thing, and I share success with all my colleagues, is how we embrace the cloud. So many things come from within, without hiring the external consultants and so on. So how we spread the knowledge and how we see values in the technologies or some architectural paradigms like serverless, and because it fits really well in our environment with our preconditions, what we have to achieve and what we have to fulfill. So I'm really proud. So we started from scratch probably 3 years ago, writing small tools with the cloud technology and gain the knowledge and experience, and we do everything cloud first currently and migrate a lot of things because we really see a lot of value even embracing cloud technology. So that's probably something where I'm really proud of, how our colleagues see all those things and see the values and see the future and the things, and how we share the knowledge within the company. So I think we have a lot of teams which are cloud obsessed, I would say.
And when you started transitioning into the cloud, did you have like a hard time? Did the people have a hard time transitioning, learning the new technology, or were you met with resistance?
Not so much from the developer side. So we saw the main reasons for moving there, like a lot of peaks and capacity planning and so on, and budgeting. We are the part of the huge company, so that's not very easy. And probably we have the main reasons, like every other company, starting with this, like thinking, okay, we can scale with the infrastructure, and then we try to embrace also cloud native mindset with serverless and so on. But it was I think the second step. So the first one was to get used with the terminology, with automation, with DevOps thinking. That was probably the fun part. And of course, we have to deal with people things like how we can embrace system administrators in this world and so on, because we have classical system administrators which have managed the data center. We're still managing data centers, but we have the parallel things. And that's probably something that I think it's really not that easy anyway, particularly in the serverless world, because you don't have servers, you can't install agents and so on. So the people constantly asking themselves how I can help the company. And sometimes it's not very comfortable situation for people who have invested a lot in the learning of other things and have to relearn, to unlearn. But this is the same is also true for the developers, because it's really a hard time for the developers if you are in the distributed world and the microservices world. You have to know everything from writing the code, from testing, from deployment automation, for operating this, monitoring alerts. Security is number one job. So this it seems easy, like to say, yeah, this is a cross-functional team, but I mean, you have the limited cognitive load capacity. So it's about to work in teams that everybody contributes to many things, but you can't learn everything. So probably the cloud is the right thing if you want to offload some things to them where they are good at, and it's not probably your core domain. So that's probably the standard story how it started at Epilabs.
What's really interesting about this story is the fact that from what I'm getting is that actually the engineers, they started promoting like, let's go to the cloud, let's do serverless, let's do all this stuff. And actually the point where there was like people were pushing back with it was actually management saying maybe we shouldn't do it, take it slowly. Even if it involves less work on management side, because they don't have to learn as much as an engineer, especially if you have an engineering background. You realize like these guys, what they're proposing, they're going to learn a lot, study a lot, they're going to work a lot to do it. And actually management was the side that said like maybe we shouldn't do it, putting the brakes on. And it wasn't like the engineers, because even in my experience, like engineers usually they like the new stuff, they want to go with it, and because of the excitement they're willing to go for all the pains of learning all the stuff,
always chasing what's new.
Was that the situation?
Not quite much, because management is quite supportive, and I'm probably in the middle management position. CTO is my leader and my manager. But of course, the developers also tend to pick only funny stuff. But if you say A, they have to say also B. So they have to operate this. But sometimes it's really hard to get there, because if you can wake up, be waken up by the alarms and so on. So you have to be able to set up this in the company. So nobody is doing this for free and so on. So you have to think about all these things. But general management was supportive. What is really the challenge is how you budget all the cloud things, because in the data center you have this fixed budget, in the cloud you have dynamic spending. So, and normally it becomes more expensive there in the first place anyway, because you have to learn, you have to make all those mistakes. In the data center you have the full storage and nobody cares, and in the cloud you pay per byte per month, and you have to take care about this. And if you migrate, you migrate all your failures from the data center in the first place, and then you have to think about this. You have to put alarms in place, and it becomes more expensive. It can even stay more expensive, but you can do more with this. But to argue about this is really challenging, because everybody wants the number, but this number is dynamic. So if we as a company is more successful, then we also pay more to the cloud provider, and that's some kind of shift in the company. So I'm the person who is doing the whole budget stuff also for the cloud, and it's sometimes really, really challenging. So I have to make assumptions, hypotheses, and so on. The world is changing. You don't really know what you will be doing in 2 months and so on. So I can't price what I don't know. But anyway,
Yes.
Each company has to be healthy. So budgeting belongs to this. I can say it's between 10 and 1 million. It's not how it's working.
Yes.
So I have to make good estimations, and I had also my learnings, because pricing in the cloud, and we are mainly using AWS, is really complex. All this data transfer stuff and so on, and storages, it's really not that easy, but you can only be better when you practice this.
Yeah. And probably it's made complicated, so you cannot really calculate from the start how much it costs. Already when you're invested, you find out how much it costs, and it's too late because you sunk too much into it.
I heard another tech consultant, his favorite answer to companies was, when he was asked how much it's going to cost, he always answered with a lot, probably more than you're comfortable spending. But then again, if your competitors get into this before you do, how fast do you want to go belly up and bankrupt? And they always think about it. And that's how he ended all the conversation.
Yeah, that's right, because you have to argue also, we know what pain did we have, and we also know we are in the image business, because we do everything with images, and the cameras becomes more powerful. You have more pictures, they are bigger. You have throughput in the internet, bandwidth, and so on. So you have to think how it will be working 2 or 3 years from now. And probably the data center is not the place you want to be. And in the data center, you often are forced to some kind of architecture, like monolithic architecture and so on. Yeah. And that's probably the thing, that the software doesn't scale. You probably can buy more hardware, but the software doesn't scale. So you need to access other architecture paradigms more easily, like containers, orchestration, serverless, and so on. You want to have this flexibility, and you don't have this in the data center. You can do everything there, but you have to operate this on your own probably, and it will cost you a lot. So I saw a lot of companies which,
the biggest,
had a lot of problems.
You know what's the most expensive thing with a data center? Having a very successful product. Because if you have a lot of traffic and a very successful product, it gets very expensive when you have to do everything yourself. If you move it in the cloud, you just charge the extra cost to your customers.
Yeah, if you do value-based pricing, and you can figure out what things are costing you on some basis, and serverless allows you to do this more or less precisely. So this, of course, but of course you have to think about your pricing model and so on. So the discussion, which sometimes starts from the developers, this discussion goes up to the CEO, because as a developer you can't change everything in the company. So you can only say, okay, so that's the thing which CEO or CTO should lead. In the end of the day, and the technology, our job is simply to provide evolutionary architecture to iterate quickly and so on. So use the technology as the main driver.
Yeah. And this is something that I want to ask you, because you're like in the middle, in the sweet spot between higher management, like the C-suite, the CTO, the CEO, and then we have on the other side, we have the engineers. And you probably have to handle a lot of negotiations about change and what technology to use, and you're basically in the perfect position to see both sides and both arguments, and what are their reasoning, because they're going to come to you and say, like, I want to achieve this because we want this, but we don't want to do this stuff. So you know the arguments from both sides, so you have the perfect vantage point, at least in my opinion. Is this true? And how do you manage like all this negotiation when it comes to bringing new technology, starting a new project, or taking some bold steps technology in technology?
Yes, I'm feeling like I'm in the elevator between these two worlds, and the hardest thing I learned is that, of course, as a technical person, we wanted to build our product more scalable, but migrating to the cloud also meant some kind of stop of the world, and the management is quite uncomfortable with those situations. So they want to move, delivering some value also to the customers, and our customers don't care if you are in the cloud or not. Of course, they want to be performant. They don't want to fail in the Christmas and so on, because they can't even imagine that this can happen. But they don't know how hard it is. That's probably one thing, that we started to be too technical, and we wanted to refactor too much, and then we had to go smaller to take only the parts which hurt it. But we also had to be compatible and deliver new products and so on. So we started to think from scratch when we delivered or develop completely new products. So that was the easiest trigger. Greenfield is always easier,
Yes.
but your main application, I will say revenue generating application, not legacy application, because
yes,
nothing can be legacy which brings you money.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that we wanted to be too quickly, and then you are always in this discussion, lift and shift or re-architect, and then re-architect costs you time and effort, and sometimes I'm quite comfortable to say we'll lift and shift, and then on the way there we will figure out how to refactor things and to gain knowledge, because at the beginning of the project, in the beginning of the cloud migration, least possible think about it. So that's probably not correct to think about it for how it will look like in 2 years, because it won't definitely be that way. So that sometimes it's really important to make the first step and don't involve in the endless discussions whether and how. So do and then iterate and change. That was probably one thing. And we really started small, and we saw the success, we saw the adoption, then we did more, and then the management also saw the benefits. And if you become more stable, then that's okay. But of course, you have to deliver value to the customers. That's probably the hardest thing, because if you slow down, then the competitors can overhaul you. I think so.
Yeah.
So that's embracing both worlds.
And I know it's a challenge, because I have a programming background, and I saw, like, in my colleagues and other people working on other projects, it's really easy as an engineer to get so fascinated with the technology itself that you forget about the customer and what he wants and what he needs.
Yeah.
And you build stuff because you want to build it, not just because the end customer really needs it and wants it, or it's something that's going to make their lives better. It's just, you just want to do it.
It's like a chef in a restaurant who loves cooking more than he loves getting paid to cook, which if you cook for yourself, that's great, but if you're in a business, that's not so good.
That's true. We also made errors and mistakes. That's probably fine, but currently we see how to navigate quickly.
Awesome.
We are far behind perfection, but I think we are currently, every adoption also means co-evolution of practices, and that's probably the hard thing. You can do the things of the old way. You won't embrace NoSQL database, doing the things like the relational database. It will fail, and then you will blame the technology probably. That's how it mainly works. So you say it doesn't work. Yeah, it works, but you have to learn and learn. We have talked about this, and that's probably everybody should figure out. Everybody can read books, see talks on YouTube, but practicing this is something very different.
Exactly. And since we're talking about failures, what is the biggest leadership failure you had the unfortunate experience of witnessing?
Yeah, that's. I think the huge problem was probably I can't say failure, but we tried to embrace, unite people under some operational paradigm. We wanted to embrace Kubernetes, to be precise, and we invested a lot, but had only limited success in terms of willingness to use this in our company. So we had to stop this, and of course, everything is more about people as about technology. So the people were very disappointed and saw it as their personal fail, and they saw also reaction from management, how they react on this, and then the relationship suffer, and so on. And we tried to figure out what was the problem, because it started very promising as always, because there are a lot of companies that really that could embrace this amazing technology. But for us, it was probably too much on complexity added, because we also try to do too many things in parallel, and then you have to learn a lot of stuff. It's probably too hard for people. And probably we understood it better after we've read the book Team Topologies by Manuel Pais and Matthew Scantle, which was released last year, that you have to think about the platform also like a product. So the platform team should also deliver this on the like a product and not like technical solution. So the people and the users are within the company, they have, they won't be served by this team. And probably we were too technical. Now we understand this, but it was very uncomfortable situation, because we saw the push back from the organization, from people which told we don't really want to use this and explain this. So we tried everything, we have iterated, but another situation there, the people saw more value in other paradigms and other operational constructs. So that's probably the thing that they said, that they don't want to operate, and they don't want to have a dependency on another team, and so on. So there were typical discussions that they were more on track than they could own everything in their team. And that's probably something that I was also one who founded this, and I was the person, one of the decision makers who had to stop it. And that's quite uncomfortable, because people rely on you, and that's what the situation, that something went broken and we have to fix this, and then that's probably the thing.
You rediscovered the very old farming principle, which says you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Same idea. You wanted a new implementation, but you can't force people to, well, you can, but with limited success.
Yeah, that's true. But we really thought it will bring us value and will bring more speed. But sometimes it's that probably too inspired by other success stories, probably from the bigger companies which have different circumstances how to adopt this and so on. So probably that was a kind of problem, but anyway, you have also to learn also from these situations, and probably try to do things in smaller iteration, because it took us many months before we realized that it's probably not the right way. And the earlier you realize it, the less it hurts, I think, to stop something. It's perfectly okay to try things out. That's how innovation works. So you have 100 ideas, and in best case, one will bring you something. And sometimes it's also in our world, in the technology world. So you try new things out, and then you see, that doesn't go that way.
And you know, Vadym, this brings like in front of my mind the fact that as a leader of technical people, if you try to push a technology that they're not excited about it, you're going to have like major pushback and the project is not going to work. But also you have to look like what are they excited about, how can we use it, and try it out, because sometimes people are excited about some new technology or a new way of doing things or a new approach because they don't actually know it, and when they try it they become really unexcited really fast about it because it turns out it's really hard, it's complicated, it's it's not what it was promised. So you have as a leader, you have to manage this in a way and guide your technical people, and in a way get them excited about what you want to do and the technology you're going to use, and keep the momentum going, and make sure that always you're checking your one hand on the excitement pulse and seeing like, are they still engaged with what we're working on, the technology we're using, the stack, or are they starting to feel like, oh no, it's old stuff, it's we don't want it, then they start looking for other jobs.
Oh yes, yes, that's a constant danger.
Yeah, it's also about responsibility. So if you force somebody to use something that they won't have any ownership, I think. So we will say, Vadym forced us to do this, and we do this, but generally they probably, that can only fail. So that's something that, of course, you have to deliver value. You have also to think how to be faster, and sometimes, yeah, that also means to learn things, and but option, and then you have to admit also, I had to admit it was the failure from my side, probably how I will do this differently today, but of course I know more currently.
And yeah, so it goes. You have to do like I don't know like what would be like a culinary example, but you have to put like some good stuff with some bad stuff to make a dish that is you can eat it at the end. So you have to put some technology that everybody wants and is excited about, and have like a side order of technology that people might not be excited about, but it has to come with it, and manage the whole mix of technology flavors.
Or start with a smaller team and test it out, and just keep adding people to the team. And if you can constantly add new people until you double the initial team, and you can integrate them all in a rapid manner, then you can say, okay, should we bring this for the entire company now? Does that make sense? Can we do it? And debate upon it. If the answer is yes, do it. If not, well, you tried. Might not be the best outcome, or might not be the right time, might not be the right technology. At least you tried.
Yeah, I would say also don't take it personally. So that's how innovation works. So it's probably you try things out, and then it's also our responsibility, and also responsibility of each developer to admit so it doesn't work. So let's try something which probably provide more value for the whole company. So that's our whole responsibility.
Which is hard. It's hard to take responsibility and say like, we love this technology, but it's not right for us. It's too hard. It's not what it was promised. It's really hard, and it's a sign of a mature engineer.
Yeah,
usually.
And there is no two same companies, no two same cultures. So something that works there won't probably work here, and so on. So it's very, very different in our world.
And with that in mind, what is your leadership philosophy, Vadym?
Okay, I probably talked a bit about it, but for me, it's something like unite people behind some shared way of doing things, which has a potential to become the culture of the company. So see where people are currently good at, there they have the potential to grow, then build a core team, positive influencers in the company, and then enlarge it. So currently we are embracing serverless or cloud native paradigm in our company. And I see that junior people or less senior people look at the people which embracing this, and then if they see success, and that's probably very important to achieve success as soon as possible, then other people also join this group of positive influence. So you can make it bigger And yes, that's something which is really important. Then if you see something growing that way, that's something where I see, okay, that's probably the right way to do. But you have to steadily think it's the right. So if you have success today, it doesn't mean that you will have success tomorrow with this. So out for other things and try to adopt, try to change. But generally, the team of positive influencers is something which is really important for me, or for the whole company, I would say.
And Vadym, I'm really curious, how do you go about building a network of influencers and having them spread the message?
You mean the company? I think that we are a really small company. We have 30 developers, so probably 6 teams. I see that that if the people see success, if they can move fastly, then they share their stories. And you have to give them the platform, like community of praxis, lightning talks, and so on, and give the possibility to share their experience. And I see the people talk in the corner and so on, so you can influence others. Sometimes you have to help, and sometimes you have to explain. But generally speaking, that's something which can occur natural, and the leader should observe this. Sometimes without involving you know your people, you know how what are the strengths of your people, and see the things. And we are currently, I do a lot of talks on meetups and conferences, and generally I do this with one of my colleagues, and a lot of colleagues join to share some experience or something growing currently. And this is what I'm currently enjoying, that the people try to share their success stories, but also learn from other people, for other companies and so on. But it's not tied to some particular technology. I think that every company can become successful with each technology. It's something that's unique to the people, unique to their knowledge and how they spread knowledge. So I think you can be successful also in the data center. It's not the point.
But I like your idea, like you can look at it, and if there are like natural mechanisms for spreading knowledge inside and excitement inside the company, that's okay. If not, you have to build some mechanism yourself, like fireside chats or conversation and meetups and some events that get the conversation rolling and getting people more and more involved with the new ideas.
Preferably with good food involved, snacks.
And beer.
Yeah,
and beer.
That's how it started with the serverless paradigm. 3 years ago, we had the whole company, all developers had 3 weeks to work on the project they wanted, which provide value for the company. So, and I was also in the team, and we had to make some internal tool, and that it was perfect for serverless because it will only be used 2 or 3 times in the month. So perfectly for scaling, not for managing servers. And we didn't know anything about serverless. We were in the cloud, but we didn't try it out at that time. But we said, okay, that's probably the right time to do this. Yeah, you can do something wrong with the internal tool. So go with this. And it's how it started. Then we have presented this, and then other people had similar tasks also. Internal tool, bad job. So they implemented this in the same way, and then we adopted the technology, and now we are using this also for our regular application. So it's something that the people see this aha effect. Okay, I can build something meaningful in 3 weeks, yeah, and I can do this like production ready, complete, and so on. And that's something. Oh, I can do this. Yeah, then. So how you achieve this, and then you spread the knowledge, and then you see if it grows. And that's also in our case that I see now 2 or 3 teams which really adopt this technology. But the future will show if it's the right way to do. There are a lot of limitations in each technology, so you have to also to deal with these things and see what's the perfect thing. So you can build everything with one paradigm. So
for sure, not
true.
but this is like really interesting. Like In my opinion, every company, doesn't matter how big or small it is, they should have projects where they build the tools, internal tools that are going to be used inside the company, and use those projects to test out new ideas, new ways of doing things, and not start like going client facing with the new ideas and trying them out. In your experience, do you also find it like it's useful to first try them out with small internal projects, and then start applying them for big projects that are client facing?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, so it's how it normally goes. Of course, it depends on the people. If you have a lot of senior people, they are probably encouraged to do more things directly in production. But generally, as you don't know in the beginning everything about the technology, about the corner cases, it's really okay to start with something very small, like agile way, then think, okay, how I can apply what I've learned for some bigger project, for some bigger feature and so on.
I'm just asking for your idea because I've seen like companies make the mistake of embracing a new paradigm, a new way of doing things, and going like, we're going to do this massive project around it because it's cool, and the engineers are excited about it, but the engineers not even one small project under their belt using that methodology of doing the project. And then they discover that, oh my god, we hate it, it's not what we wanted. Yeah. And it turns like from a nice green field, it turns into a cesspool of spaghetti code.
Yeah, everything is cool when it works, but you also have to think if it fails and you are under the pressure and you have to fix it and you don't understand this, and nearly always have to understand one abstraction behind your technology stack to be able to figure out what's going on. Then it becomes interesting. Yeah, so it's the management is not interested in paradigm. Then they are interested in fixing problems quickly. And if you can't do this, that's probably something, the missing piece.
I also believe it comes down to how the engineer feels about the company or client he's working for. Because if he or she likes the client and says, listen, things to themselves, I can see myself working for 5, 8, 10, or 14 years, like in your case for this company, then they will be very careful about what technology they pick, about adding changes to the project. They will want everything to be as stable as possible. But if, and I saw this person, if they dislike the company that they work for, they're like, listen, in 8 months, I'm going to get a new job anyway. So let me just add this new technology to my CV, to my resume. I'll test it out here to have real world production capabilities. Then I'll just quit if it fails. C'est la vie. And I'll go. And I've seen this happen. And then a new developer or engineer has to come back and he looks at the work done and is like, oh my God, why? Like, why? And it happens.
Yeah, I think people call this CV-driven development.
Yes, yes. I haven't heard that one in a long time. It's true.
And it happens. Yeah. It happens a lot. A new technology is hot, so some people just drive for a project inside the company just so they can move to a new company.
Any legacy project I've worked on, depending on how old it was, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, I always knew what was really hot in the industry when that project was started. Like, for example, my last project I worked on, Mongo and microservice style architectures were really hot. So I had plenty of both.
I think that the technical people, they are driven by technology. So if you will combine technology and responsibility, then I think it's the right way to go. And the responsibility not from one person, but also from the whole team, which is responsible for some piece of software. Yeah. And there will be people in the same team which will probably slow down and say, okay, let's become mature, because it's not about only you, it's about our team as a whole. And then if they have the culture to talk about this, then that's okay.
And developing maturity is something everybody has to do on their own, and also leaders to help people underneath them become more mature. And with that in mind, what would be the top leadership tips you have for aspiring leaders?
It's really difficult to figure out, to pick only three, but the first one would be, I would say, always explain why and behind the decision. People always need to hear why, and that's probably one thing where I had shortcomings in the past. Something that you say and you think that people will understand you, but generally you have to explain, and there is a saying that you have to say something 7 times before it's really understood, and this is something
sometimes more.
Sometimes more. If it's a very important decision, then explain, then look at the people's eyes and then see, do they understand this, then address this, because if they mentally detached, they don't understand, they will probably won't implement this way. That's the one thing. The second thing, which I also learned from my failing, is don't defer difficult decisions or conversations. If you have to stop something, or you have the point that somebody has to improve, so don't delay those conversations and this decision. It only becomes worse with the time. So as a leader, you have to be there and you have to address this as quickly as possible. So you have to address this in some way that the people, that you have access to the people, but generally don't delay. The problem won't be solved by itself. And sometimes it's very easy to think it will be solved. The third one is probably controversial one, but I tried always to provide some kind of framework or basic condition for the teams, like for their decision guidance. So give them something that they can say, okay, is my decision right or wrong? It shouldn't be if then else, but some kind of decision matrix or some guidance and so on, because I know a lot of discussion, what is good, 1 programming language or 10 programming languages, but investment in learning is something which is probably the most expensive thing in the company. So you have to think about how many teams do you have? Should each team use different tool for the same thing? Because you don't have shared learning. And so try to find balance there and provide some things that your company works as a whole. And sometimes you can see your teams as microservices, which operate independently. So this is some kind of framework for decision making, that the people understand the intention of the management, but of course they can argue, they can ask questions. It's not about what JavaScript framework of the day, it's probably too small, but for some bigger decisions, for architectural paradigms, for bigger tooling and so on, then I think it's probably the right way to do. But I think it also depends on the size of the company, of maturity of engineering and so on. But I figured out that generally people need some kind of guidance.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious because I'm fascinated with the idea of having a methodology, a way for people to see, like, take decisions on their own and be like compliant or on the same wavelength with management or the other teams. Can you give like an example, a complete example of how you would set up like one of this decision guidelines?
So we have set up one with our AWS native serverless paradigm. So the first thing, if you see AWS managed service, and it's serverless service, and it fits what you want to do with feature set and also pricing, that is some kind of the first option to take. So the second option is also AWS, but you some kind of manage things partially. So if you don't see the technology where it's completely serverless, take this. If you need something more sophisticated and AWS doesn't have some service, so figure out this like software as a service. One example was PagerDuty as for alarms and for incident management. And AWS has CloudWatch alarms, but it was very basic. And we also have application outside the cloud. So we needed some tool where we can manage all the incidents and so on. But we don't want to manage this on our own. So we found PagerDuty, which is software as a service, managed for you and so on. And the same is for monitoring, and people tend to see, okay, I would like to manage the monitoring tool on my own, and then you have to scale it out and have monitoring for your monitoring and so on. So we try to be as serverless as possible, but of course it's not always possible. Sometimes you need servers or you need containers and you need orchestration, but the top priority is to think, how can I do this without servers? One example was that we need some kind of orchestration. We needed some kind of orchestration, and people knew BPMN, Camunda, and some kind of these things, and wanted to try this out. And then, yeah, we started the discussion: why not aware step function as an orchestration tool? Because it's managed, it's serverless, and it's way easier. And but they had limited set of features comparing to Camunda. But we rethought how we can implement this to embrace this managed technology. So this was also the part, so how we can become serverless and use the whole AWS ecosystem, and how we can rethink all these things. And that's some kind of soft policy. It's not about using some particular technology. It's not about, I want to use SQS, SNS, and other services. That the people are best at to figure out. But in the first place, we are thinking how to do this like without managing services and spending more time on production code. So we are trying this. Everything is hypothesis. We are trying to validate where it fits, where it doesn't fit, and so on. But you have some kind of decisions. The same is, do you want multi-cloud, hybrid, and so on. And this is also, I think that's the management has to play some frameworks, because I think it's not okay that one service will be implemented in AWS, another in the Azure, and so on, because you have a lot of contracts and so on. And it's probably not where the developers have to deal with this. So you need some clarification from the management, what is the way to go. If you say, I go all in with AWS, and it's perfectly fine to be cloud native, then these decisions are very important for the tech people to build on this. So we have some examples.
But that's really interesting, because when you as an engineer, you have to make some decisions about how you're going to tackle something, or then you can just start like, okay, first place where I should look for a solution is this, because that's something that's already approved, and if I find something, I can use it. The second place I should look is here. And it offers, like, because not all people are as creative or want to look on all the places.
It's a checklist.
Yes, it's like a checklist. If you don't have the checklist, you look like in the common places where you like to look. And if you don't find something, you say, oh, I'll build it myself, where it becomes really complicated and it spirals out of control. But if you have like a pre-made list of places, like if you have to tackle something related to this area, look here, 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 and here. See if you find something there that you can use, and you have the blessing to use it. It streamlines, and you don't have to have all this back and forth and all these discussions. And you have besides the time saving, you have engineers that find the solution, and then they come back to you and say, like, I found this. This is how I want to do it. I've checked it and everything. And just say, okay, go and do it. You don't have to have all the negotiation, the back and forth, and have you look there, have you look there.
It's kind of like, I think about it like a car. Even a mechanic can know everything about a car, but if you're planning a longer trip, you at least should go through a simple checklist. Are the tires inflated? Do I have gas? Do I have brakes? Do I have good rubber? Do I have everything? If everything checks out, I'm probably going to be safe. But you might have electrical problems, something that comes about. You don't know. Stuff happens. That's not a problem, but at least modicum of prevention should be done before taking any expensive decisions in any direction.
Yeah, but one thing I learned, it's of course you have to explain why, you have to embrace people there, but you don't need to micromanage this thing. So if you go into the individual technologies and write this down, then the people won't think about this. So this is then they are okay. Somebody made the decision, and of course, it's sometimes you have to think how many programming languages will you allow. I was saying the company, because many people refer to the companies like Google, Netflix, but not every company is Google and Netflix. And also Google has one programming language for 4,000 engineers approximately. So think about this carefully. But of course, you have to see it doesn't have to be only one. Yeah, because we have a back end, we have front end, and there are a lot of frameworks, and we know how things are going with the JavaScript frameworks. Today is Angular, tomorrow is Vue, and then probably something else. But so you have to find the golden way of doing things, because learning programming languages, learning frameworks, learning a lot of corner cases, it also takes time. And you have to, if you learn too much at the same time, you will probably don't deliver value. So then you can't explain to the management, I'm learning new programming language for 3 or 4 months in the row. So
it's a dream job.
It's a dream job. I had the situation 16 years ago, not in this company, where the web framework Struts Java-based was released for 3D architecture and so on. And one senior developer missed some features, and he had re-implemented everything by himself. The problem was he hadn't delivered any value to the management, and they were really disappointed to see this framework and not the implementation they needed. So that's but that's sometimes how people think they can. I can do this quickly. Then they can turn down. But I think that industry is now mature enough not to invest time in these things. But 16, 15 years ago, there were different times with the open source releasing, and it was the beginning of this age. So,
and since we're on the topic of learning, what is the book that had the most profound impact on you? It doesn't have to be technology related or leadership related. Any book that really had like a profound impact.
I probably picked one, but one thing was The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, with Mark Andreessen. You probably Netscape, you know, he's a huge investor currently, working with Mark Andreessen, who said software is eating the world. That's probably, the book is for more senior manager as I am, but he described how difficult it was to make decisions. Then you had to lay off people, and so that's really difficult stuff. You wouldn't like to deal with this, but he explained how to do this, how to retain people also in this situation, how to explain how to motivate this, and that's really, it's not what I'm doing, but it was really what he says, building a business when there are no easy answers. And it was very useful for me to think about this uncomfortable situation, uncomfortable conversation, but also trying to go forward in this difficult situation. He is very, very successful, but he started in the beginning of 2000, and it was some kind of different time. I started also as a software developer at that time. It was very difficult even to find a job. And he's also a technical guy. And so he described this all uncomfortable things, all uncomfortable decisions, how you live with this also, but how you have to make this decision, sometimes even detach emotionally, because it will eat you up. That was probably the one thing. I don't know if I will need this in my life, but it's
hopefully not.
Hopefully not, but it was some kind of experience to absorb. And the recent book which I've read 1 month ago, also about leadership in general, from Jocko Willink and Liv Babin, dichotomy of leadership, where he describes that that you have to find balance between too little and too much in each and every case as a leader. So there is no right and wrong answer, and that was really, really interesting, how you sometimes micromanage, but sometimes you rely too much on the people and then don't produce results. And also other paradigms, and you planned for every outage, which probably costs you too much time, versus you don't plan anything. And so on. So this is the tech people says everything is a trade-off, and that's also in leadership. That was clear for me. He described 13 dichotomies, so this balances, and that's probably that was very impactful to me to see this, because that's what I really need on my daily basis. So to find the right balance, and probably even the right balance on the people base, because people are different.
Yeah, exactly. So true. And regarding the trade-off, and this is something from my career, when I was asked to do some major feature or major overhaul or stuff like that, and I was asked to estimate the timeline and the budget, I always replied with, well, it can be fast, cheap, and reliable, but you can only pick 2 of those. So when you find out what you want, please tell me, and then we'll go with a plan, because you cannot have all 3 at the same time.
Yeah, there is one joke, and for the technical people, I can meet every deadline if it doesn't have to work.
yes, so true, so true. Or doesn't have to work as expected.
Yeah. And the biggest truism among technical people is it never works during demo time.
Oh yeah.
Or it's working on my local machine. That's
exactly. But when you show somebody else,
yeah. Or the other one. But the tests pass. All the tests pass. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. It's funny because I'm sure we have a couple of more non-technical listeners, and they're like, what are they talking about? Why are they laughing about tests not passing and local machine? Oh, the pain is so true.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Vadym, if people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, 2 places. The first one, I'm very active on Twitter. My handle is very simple, V Kazulkin, the first letter of my name, and then the whole surname written together. Or you can search simply with name and surname, and the same as on LinkedIn. So with my first and last name, you can find me. I don't have any personal page. Father of 3, so I have to balance things, and probably I will do it in the future, but I'm currently happy with Twitter. And on the LinkedIn, I share some highlights from the book I read, like this dichotomy of the leadership. So I put some quotes there, and that I'm pretty happy to do this there, and then people also answer and involved in these discussions. And this Twitter and LinkedIn, you can find me there.
And if anybody is planning a visit to Bonn and wants to learn more about serverless and Java, reach out to Vadym on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Go join the
meetups.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It will also work. And Bonn and Cologne, 2 cities, are really 20 kilometers away. So we have big city, and then Düsseldorf is also 1 hour away. So we have here a huge community with AWS and also Java, and also other interesting stuff. Also Azure is very present in the region, because we have Microsoft sitting in Cologne also. So I think that even Azure is more visible in my region, but very techy region.
This is something that I like to do. Like when I travel to some place, I try to I join some meetups, some events that are coming out that I find interesting, and I go there and I get new perspective, new flavors, and it's something I encourage every person to do. If you're an engineer, go look at engineering, and not just engineering meetups. Go to other meetups that you find interesting when you're traveling, going to get a better experience of the place and of the culture. You're more of a local when you go to a meetup than
yeah. And speaking about being from Köln, I'm a little jealous because you have the best real world example to the question of when can the server or the job or the project be finished, because you have the famous cathedral in Köln, started in the 13th century. It's called the Eternal Worksite. Yeah. Best real world example of a monolith. Best real world example of one. It's never done. It's never finished.
But it's still useful.
Yes.
It doesn't have to scale. That's okay for
It's been a pleasure, Vadym, having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Also, thank you, Andrei and Bogdan, for having me. It was my first experience for the podcast, but
hope you enjoyed
it. I enjoyed it very much, and also thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was today's episode. Tune in daily. Rate, like, subscribe, and share, please. Oh, you can find further info and materials in the show notes on techyleadership.com, including links to the guest book recommendations.